introduce our guest speaker. Former Congressman David Jolly grew up in Florida, son of a pastor. He and his wife, Laura, are raising their family in Pinellas County, which he represented the U.S. House of Representatives from 2014 to 2017. In Congress, Jolly focused on helping veterans and seniors, supporting law enforcement, protecting the environment, and bringing resources back to Florida. Following his time in Congress, Jolly has been a longtime political commentator on MSNBC and NBC. Please extend a warm welcome to Democratic candidate for the upcoming Florida gubernatorial election, David Jolly.
Hey. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you, but you have no idea what I'm about to say. Well, thank you. Thank you. And I know why you say that. Let me say thank you to those who have been regular viewers of MSNBC and MS Now. Thank you. You know, it's a little heartbreaking. I stepped away from the network about a year ago, but I promise you, it is with appreciation I say thank you to those who have been part of the viewing family, because it is a family. It's been a family for the last 10 years at that network with our viewers. Thank you for being a part of it. I also say for those who have not been regular viewers of MSNBC, you probably saved a lot of money on counseling or alcohol or calories or... So give mightily to the St. John's Democratic Party with those savings tonight. Let me do a couple things, and then we'll do as much Q&A as we can, but I want to share a few things. First, let me do a little bit more of an introduction so we know more about each other. Let me also share with you the 3 values that I talk about in this race, 3 values that I hope to emanate as a candidate, but values that are bigger than our party and big enough to tether together a coalition that's going to win in November. Because the last thing I'm going to tell you is we're going to win this race. We're going to win this race in November. I promise you. Listen, we are going to win. Not me, not David Jolly. We are going to win as a coalition and as a state, and we're going to achieve change for the first time in 30 years. I promise you we're going to do that. So a little bit more of an introduction. As was mentioned, my wife and I live in Pinellas County. That's the Clearwater Beach area. I was born there to the son of a minister. We moved around a bit. I lived in Miami for 10 or 12 years. Lived in Pasco County for about 10 years. Graduated from high school there in Pasco High. I've lived in Pensacola. I've lived all around the state. I'm a 5th-generation Floridian, but it doesn't make me a lick better than someone who moved here yesterday. My wife and I have 2 young children, yes, 6 and 4. I'm 53, and they're 6 and 4, and every day's a Monday at our house. Obviously, that's part of our lived experience. We're going to talk a little bit about that. A couple other things I'd talk about. I was in Congress. I was in Congress as a Republican. I apologize for those years. But I say that for this reason. I'm not going to ask anybody to identify themselves. I want to say thank you to the Republicans and independents who are in the room tonight, because I know you're in the room tonight. And what we're doing in this state and what is happening is bigger than the party. Listen, I'm a proud Florida Democrat, not a reluctant Democrat, but the values that I see in the Democratic Party are so much bigger than our party. And one of the things that I get to do as a new Democrat is I get to accept math. And science and data and public health and vaccines and all the other things that contribute to human progress. But math is math, folks. There aren't enough Democratic voters in the state of Florida tonight to elect a Democratic governor. There are not. We don't get to wish that away. If we pretend that that's not true, we're going to lose. But the answer is not to dilute or change who we are as Democrats. It's to amplify who we are and to build a coalition with independents and Republicans who in this moment know it's time for change. Look, a little bit more of my introduction. Change is part of my story. I don't run from it, I celebrate it. I think change in politics is a great thing. I do. I don't think the problem in politics are people like me who change. I think it's people who won't change. And so, yes, I'm proud of my change. There was a journey that I've been on for the last 15 years. I started taking votes in Congress I didn't like, and I started to move and change while I was in Congress. I don't run from it. I don't hide it. I test a different question in politics. Is it okay to grow? Is it okay to change your mind? I think the answer is yes. To my down-the-line Democratic friends, I would say this. Imagine if Hillary Clinton had remained a Republican. She was a college Republican president at Wellesley. Motivated by the civil rights era in Vietnam, she moved and became a Democrat and associated with the Democrats. Imagine if Elizabeth Warren, at 47 years old, had remained a conservative Republican attorney. She took a tour of bankruptcy cases across the country and in her words, thought she was going to discover a bunch of deadbeats. And instead, she discovered that these were families and people just like her who were disrupted by healthcare or divorce or job loss. She moved to associate with the Democratic Party and became a consumer champion. She changed. Change is part of our story. Imagine if Barack Obama had not eventually embraced marriage equality in his second term, not his first term. You see, change is at the root of who we are as a nation and who we are politically. And so, yes, change is part of my story. The last part of my introduction I share, and please bear with me, I mean this very respectfully, I speak openly about my Christian faith, openly about it. Not to try to evangelize, not to try to put it into politics. It's just part of my introduction. I'm married, I have 2 kids, I live in Pinellas County, I'm a lawyer, I was on TV, and yes, I celebrate my Christian faith, but I do it for a couple reasons. One, I think we need more politicians being willing to speak about their faith in this moment. But we also need politicians who are people of faith who understand that their personal and private faith stops at the steps to the State House. Because in a state and a country that launched culture wars based on the foundations of religion 10 years ago, it is wrong. It is violative of the Constitution, and we need a governor who understands that their role in what the Constitution requires is to lift up and empower and protect the freedoms and liberties of all people, whether people of faith or those who identify as agnostics or atheists, who on most days are more charitable than those of us who sit in church pews. You see, whether it's a belief in what Thomas Jefferson declared as the natural rights of man, or whether it's a belief in your faith teachings, the basics, love, joy, dignity, respect, empowerment, we all share a certain set of values that have made this country great, that have made this state great, but values that we have let slip away from us. And so those values that I talk about, if we were to translate them into politics, there's 3 things I always talk about. Now understand, when I talk about these values slipping away, I say it from my lived experience. We all have different lived experience. I mentioned the age of my children. My wife and I ask ourselves routinely, as a 5th-generation Floridian who's lived across the state, should we raise our kids in the state of Florida? Should we raise our kids in the state of Florida? It's a real question for us. Now, you don't have to have kids or grandkids to be asking yourself the same thing. Many of you in this room have Googled Portugal. If you haven't, you're going to tonight to say, why did Jolly talk about Portugal? It's because it's the #1 destination for people looking to leave the country in this era. We're all asking ourselves, is democracy going to survive? Is this a state and a country that we're committed to, that we want to live in? So yes, the state of Florida, the reason we ask ourselves that question is I believe we're burdened by 2 crises right now. We have an economic crisis, not just an affordability crisis. There's an economic crisis. The affordability crisis is whether or not you can pay your rent this month. The economic crisis is whether you feel secure in having housing for the next 10 years and access to health care and an education system that's been abandoned, and now the state wants to charge you tuition on top of vouchers for choice schools that don't even have to teach your kids to read. There's an economic crisis in the state of Florida. And then we're a state that's exhausted by culture wars. Exhausted by culture wars. And what my friends on the other side of the aisle in Tallahassee at least fail to realize is that culture wars have victims. Culture wars have victims. When you marginalize already marginalized communities, when you attack the franchise and suffrage for voters of color, when you attack the LGBTQ plus community, culture wars have victims. And so yes, we're a state that is begging for change. We are exhausted and anxious about an economic crisis and exhausted by culture wars. How do we thread together a movement to turn the corner and create Florida's next chapter now? I think there are 3 values. 3 values rooted in Democratic Party tradition, from FDR to JFK to Obama and to all other leading Democrats, but they're bigger than our party. What are those values? First, the economy should work for everybody. The economy should work for everybody. It is not working for everybody, folks. Now, I want to be very clear about something. We shouldn't attack success. We should congratulate success. We don't need to fight the haves to fight for the have-nots. We have a capitalist economy. Since World War II, we've invested in responsible social programs, access to education, to healthcare, to home ownership, retirement security. We've done all these things that have allowed many people through the generations to find success. Congratulations. But the economy is not working for everybody. Half of this state tonight does not have enough savings to last 2 weeks. They can't afford healthcare. They're worried about where they're going to raise their kids, whether they'll have a roof over their head. They're worried about an education system that's been abandoned in their neighborhood, and as I mentioned, choice schools that are asking for tuition on top of vouchers. The economy's not working for everybody. It should. The second value sounds a little bit like Bill Clinton in 1992, but government can do things that improve our lives. Government can improve our lives and make our lives better. Look, it should be lean and efficient and accountable. And yes, we should always look first to the private sector, to the faith community, the nonprofit community for solutions that are more efficient and qualitatively better than government. But there are certain functions that only government can provide. Access to public education, access to healthcare, the ability to stay in affordable and workforce housing, investments in clean air and clean water, and yes, safe communities, law enforcement. There are certain functions of government. And when we start attacking government, or we start attacking local control of government, we're actually attacking ourselves. And so, yes, we're in an era where we have abandoned many of the social investments that have allowed the economy to work for people and allowed people to find a way up. The third value I talk about is very simple, and it's heartbreaking that we are in a place in Florida history where this is now controversial. But we must be a state, and one of the reasons I'm a proud Florida Democrat is because I know of the value within our party, but the value that we need to return to our state, where everyone's rights are protected and their dignity celebrated, regardless of the color of their skin, where they were born, who they love, or who they worship. That's a value. It's a value. Now, I want to be very specific. I say rights are protected and dignity celebrated, because those are two different things. Protecting everyone's rights, we have a playbook for that. It's called the Constitution. If we abide by it, if we take it through the court system, we fail sometimes. Ours is a story throughout American history of trying and failing and getting it right in the long run. Yes, we can protect people's rights, but we need to celebrate the dignity of everybody. In a state that launched culture wars, I don't think often about election night. I'm not wired that way. Our job is to wake up every day and win the day. And then you win the week. And then you win the month. And then you get to November and you win the election. But one night crossing Alligator Alley, I thought, what is it the root of what we're trying to do here? What is one thing that I would be proudest to be able to do if we win this race? We, all of us. And it's this. I think on election night, I would love to be the next governor who stands up and says to the world, that on behalf of the state that 8 years ago launched culture wars, we apologize. We apologize. This is now a state where everyone is welcome. We want you to stay here. We want you to live here. We want you to visit here. We want your kids and grandkids to call it home. We apologize. We again return to being a state where everyone's dignity is celebrated. And yes, their rights are protected. So look, those three values, I believe, are rooted in Democratic Party tradition, but so much bigger than our party. What does that look like in policies? I'll just top line a couple quick things so we can get to Q&A. But if you were to say, we're going to fight for an economy that works for everyone and recognize that government can improve people's lives, there's 3 or 4 main areas that need tackling right now. The affordability and economic crisis presents itself in housing, in healthcare, and in education. Often we talk about housing and we think only about homeowners. We skip past the fact that some of the greatest emerging crises is among our renter community. It truly is. And that can be young families, that can be individuals, that can be seniors. Let's start with homeowners and also talk about renters. What can we do right now? Policies that are available to us. First, I think the homeowners insurance market in the state of Florida has collapsed. It's collapsed and it's not coming back. Tallahassee politicians right now are keeping it held together by Band-Aids and through grift, graft, and corruption and giveaways to the insurance industry. We need a state catastrophic fund in the state of Florida to fully remove hurricane coverage from the private market. It will reduce homeowners insurance by 60 to 70%. It is, in a state that has denied climate science for too long, there is no longer a market-based, affordable way to cover homeowners insurance. Market-based, yes, but market-based and affordable, no. And so government has to step in. Look, I introduced a national catastrophic fund in Congress. The idea is simple. Remove natural disasters from the private market. put it into a state sovereign wealth fund, it becomes the model for covering natural disasters. Hurricanes in Florida, wildfires in California, flooding in Texas, tornadoes in Tornado Alley. My opponents on the other side call it socialism. I just call it cheaper insurance. But guess what? My opponents on the other side currently fund a state hurricane fund, a socialized fund, and it has $8 billion in it. And you know what they use it for? To bail out insurance companies. How about we build that fund to actually reduce the risk and exposure of homeowners and reduce homeowners insurance in the state of Florida? Another area where we can provide relief, I think we need targeted property tax relief in the state of Florida. I do. Now look, I've been a Republican. Republican math never quite works out. What we're seeing in Tallahassee is not going to work out. They are looking to defund communities. I think they are trying to make local communities wards of the state. That if you're a good red community, you'll get some revenue, and if you're a blue community, you won't get any. The House today just passed a full repeal of property taxes, but for schools. But guess what it repeals money for? The police, law enforcement. That's right, Tallahassee Republicans in the House right now just voted to defund the police. Remember that attack from 4 years ago or 6 years ago? Republicans just did it. They just did it in Tallahassee. The math doesn't work. But I don't think we should be a party that just says no to property tax relief in the midst of an economic crisis. I think we need a few areas, 2 areas of targeted relief. What if we were able to get the math to work on an additional homestead exemption of $50,000 or $100,000? It would be the most progressive property tax relief package we've seen. You see, if your home's only worth $200,000 or $250,000, it almost eliminates your entire taxable burden if that's on top of current homestead exemptions. But for those with homes at $2 million or $3 million, the impact obviously is less effectual. Another area I will tell you that I think we need dramatic property tax relief is for first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers. Many of us benefit from Save Our Homes and portability because as prices started to rise in the state of Florida, people were having to leave their homes. So public policy came in and said, look, we need to provide a cap on the increase of taxes. It was smart, good public policy, almost 30 years old. We should keep it. But now, 30 years later, guess who bears the brunt of that? First-time home buyers, when they buy a home from a 30-year homesteader, their tax bill jumps by 300, 400, 500%. Now insurance and taxes are greater than the note. So yes, I think we need first-time home buyer relief, either additional homestead exemption, a 3, 4, 5-year step up in basis. Another area where we can address the cost of housing in the state of Florida is I think we need significant utility reform. Now listen, utility reform starts with campaign finance reform. Because we have one of the most corrupt campaign finance systems in the entire country right here in the state of Florida. We do. What do I mean by utility reform? We have regulated monopolies right now. Our investor-backed utilities have agreed to provide universal service, and in return, they go to the state and they ask for what their profit margin can be. The national average is about 9.5%. Our investor-backed utilities keep asking for 11, 12, 13%. Every point they get transfers several $100 million from our pockets to their investors. I think, given that it's a regulated monopoly, we should cap the rate of profit for investor-backed utilities at the national average. It's 9.5%. That's a solid profit, a solid return, and it protects ratepayers instead of protecting shareholders. In the midst of an economic crisis, it benefits homeowners and renters alike. I think we need additional investments in workforce and affordable housing. We have models that work very well, that Republicans continue to fund. Let's scale it up because we have too few units available in most counties across the state. Miami-Dade's missing 105 or 110,000 units. Palm Beach County, 85,000 units. We have a shortage of units. So let's put more money, more of our budget into affordable and workforce housing that provides housing units in people's area where they work based on a trade or an income or proximity to work. These are policies that are available right now. The healthcare crisis that I mentioned, we should be a state that expands Medicaid. We should expand Medicaid. We are one of only 10 states that doesn't. We're one of only 10 states that doesn't. And 10 or 15 years into this, we now know based on the other states that have done it, that it improves the qualitative outcomes for beneficiaries, the healthcare outcomes for beneficiaries, but it's an economic return to the state. It makes too much sense. The problem is Tallahassee won't do it because they're too busy litigating the legacy of a guy named Barack Obama instead of delivering health care to Florida's families. So we should expand Medicaid. But I will also tell you this. Look, I've done about 170 of these now. We've been from the Alabama border down to Key West and everywhere in between. I'm doing what Lawton Childs did. I'm just driving, not walking. But something happens as you go across the state over the course of a year and as you learn the crises as they emerge in certain communities. I think we need to try something different. I don't think we can wait on Medicaid expansion. I don't think we can wait on Washington to figure out the next insurance-driven platform reform that ultimately they say will fix costs and it doesn't. Some of you may remember this. We used to be a state where there were county health clinics in all 67 counties. Regardless of the ability to pay, you could walk in and get primary health care services for you or your family. We need to go back to doing that right now. We need to go back to doing that right now. There are families right now who do not have access to health care. And when a crisis emerges, they end up in an emergency room. The economics are the same. We can go into communities and provide direct primary care services, improve qualitative outcomes for individuals and families, and reduce costs. Now, again, before my friends on the right say, whoa, 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 that's big government, guess what? In so many of these areas, they're already funding programs just like this. We have federally qualified community health centers all across the state. They're starving for money. Let's spend more money and create more access points. We'll use the platforms Republicans have already created, and we'll do it to deliver health care, and we can do it with Republicans and ask them to come along with us. There are answers just within reach to crises that we are facing right now. The last policy area I talk about is education, because we have a crisis in public education in the state of Florida that's been created by politicians over the last 25 years in the state of Florida. We abandoned public education over the last several decades, abandoned it. Folks, our public school teachers tonight are paid dead last in the nation. Dead last in the nation. It is a moral wrong. I don't care what your voter registration card says, Republican, Independent, Democrat. I've been all of them. We have a lot in common. It's not a partisan issue to say it's a moral wrong that in the third largest state with an economy our size, we pay our teachers dead last in the nation. We're asking them to do jobs. Tonight, a teacher, an administrator, a staff member is doing the work of 3 or 4 people that we had 10 years ago doing it. We have abandoned public education, and yet still today, out of the love and commitment and passion and intellect and expertise of our educators and our administrators and our volunteers, still today, the greatest access to excellence in academics and the trades and the arts are in the very public schools that politicians continue to attack. But in a state with universal choice, what do you think is happening? We're abandoning public education. We have too many properties that are 80-year-old properties with trailers and portables as classrooms with leaky windows or leaky air conditions. We have playgrounds that are dusty fields under an oak tree. No family's going to rush into that environment when we have new choice schools with new buildings, ballistic glass, small classrooms, fancy computers, fancy ball fields. Look, Jeb Bush knew something about choice. Families are always going to fight for their kids before they fight for state policy. So if we have abandoned public education, the answer isn't to keep abandoning it. It's to have a 10-year renaissance in public education in the state of Florida. A 10-year renaissance. I think we can take at least 10% of our tourist development tax dollars that come in every day into this state, and for the next 10 years, put it into public education. Give public school teachers a 30% pay raise, a 30% pay raise, not a 3% pay raise. Improve the infrastructure of our public schools, create the virtual platforms of learning for the future, and be a state that declares proudly that we are going to be the leading state in the nation for public education. Why not? Why not? Because guess what? In the name of school choice and in the name of freedom, we have bought into a system that tonight a choice school in the state of Florida does not have to teach your kid to read. Does not have to teach. I know that's crazy. I'm looking around. I don't see a lot of parents of first graders in this room. Let me tell you a real story about a first grader. First grade kid can't read. They get to kick them out. They get to kick them out. They get to send them back to public school and say, send us a kid who can read. Because that choice school tonight does not have to provide an individual education program, special services. They don't have to provide access to excellence in academics, trigonometry in the 10th grade, access to arts and the trades. They don't have to do any of that. They don't get measured by the same rules. They don't have to abide by the same testing and metrics and standards. So I think the answer is have a 10-year renaissance in public education where we champion public education, provide the resources for public education to outcompete our choice schools. We'll keep choice in the state of Florida, but guess what? There's a whole new set of rules. If you take a voucher, you've got to provide the same standards and testings and academics and offerings that our public schools do. And if you do that, then welcome to being an education partner to Florida's families. But there's one more thing. You don't get to charge tuition on top of the voucher. Because the whole idea 25 years ago is we were going to help families with the greatest economic need and need for mobility. 70% of voucher recipients in the first year of universal vouchers were already enrolled in public schools. And then the public school, or the private, were already enrolled in private schools. And then the private schools, because there are no rules, started charging tuition on top of the vouchers. On top of the vouchers. So now the families with greatest economic needs still can't access the choice program because of the financial cost of it. We have an education crisis emerging that is also part of our economic crisis for Florida's families. I realize I've gone on a little bit on policy. I want to get to Q&A. Let me wrap up with two quick things. What does it mean to be a state that fights for the rights of everyone and the dignity of everyone? It means on day one, the culture wars are over. The culture wars are over. Bring back the books, let teachers teach. Recognize all of history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Recognize all of history as it relates to men and women and white and black and minority communities and religious minority communities. Teach it all so we can learn from it and make our kids stronger and more capable and more prepared for the future. It means returning to local control. If a local community wants to paint a mural for the LGBTQ plus community or Black Lives Matter, God bless you, I'll buy you a can of paint. I don't know why our governor is so threatened by this idea of diversity. Diversity makes us stronger as a state, more capable as a state. It also means elevating and embracing science in this state. It means getting the ideologues out of our institutions. What does that look like? You know what I get to do on my very first day in office? I get to fire the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. Fire the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. Fire the Surgeon General of the state of Florida. We get to appoint a new education commissioner. We get to reshape the state university system and get out of these failed Republican politicians that they always find a way to fail up into our state university systems. Let's return to a state university system that believes in institutional autonomy and academic excellence and academic advancement and, yes, diversity and equity and inclusion. Let's do it all. It means putting on the Public Service Commission that regulates our utilities, people that believe in clean and renewable energies and climate science and climate change and environmental protection and protecting ratepayers. There are so many things we can do through the appointment process that not only improves policies in the state, but cut out the culture wars that have led us to where we are today. So the last thing is, how do we win? How do we win? Because we're going to win this race. We're going to win this race. Listen, a couple quick things on how we win. Notice in the last 15, 20 minutes, I've not once mentioned the President of the United States. Some people are like, why not? I got my No Kings hat on, right? And others are like, thank you for not doing it. Listen, I'm not asking anyone to lay down their convictions about the president. I made mine very clear in December of 2015 when the president, the then candidate, called for the Muslim ban. I went to the House floor and gave my Christian testimony of faith. And I stood there in front of the world and in front of the Congress and said, the reason I'm giving you my Christian testimony of faith is to prove to you the freedom that we have today, a freedom that we may not have if Donald Trump has his way. That was 11 years ago. I have never moved. I have never wavered. And I remain convicted tonight that we are going in the wrong direction under his leadership. But I will tell you this race is not the race to litigate the President of the United States. We will have a Senate race. We will have congressional races. This race is about what Bob Graham and Lawton Childs used to talk about, the responsible administration of the state government. Are we educating your kids, providing you access to health care, access to home ownership, the ability to stay in your apartment or your condo? Are we investing in smart growth and clean air and clean water and protecting the fragile environment and the environmental economy? Are we protecting the fundamental rights and expanding the ability to vote and show up at a voting box? That's what this race is about. And when we focus in on those issues, when we recognize that this race is about the governorship of Florida, not the presidency of the United States, that's how you get an Andy Beshear in Kentucky, a Steve Bullock in Montana, and that's how you get a David Jolly in the state of Florida. That's how we do it. Two remaining things on how we win. I will be a candidate that goes everywhere. I promise you. We will leave it all on the field. But as Democrats, we have to do this together. We have to go into communities where we have not gone before. I have to sit with the faith community and explain that, yes, my faith teachings better align with the values that I think are amplified by the Democratic Party right now, that the economy should work for everyone, that government has a role in improving our lives, and that we're going to celebrate the dignity of everybody. I need to speak with the faith community about why that aligns with faith teachings. I need to go to the gun community and say, listen, I'm not going to take a firearm from a law-abiding citizen, but I'm going to fight like hell to stop the next school shooting. We are going to work on gun violence prevention in the state of Florida, comprehensive and universal background checks. I think we should pursue storage requirements and licensing, and yes, maybe even consider insurance. There are things we can do that don't take a firearm from a law-abiding citizen, but if we have the opportunity to reduce gun violence, we should pursue it. We've got to sit with the ag community that outperforms for our Republican friends and say, listen, your labor markets are tight because this governor's not fighting crime, he's fighting a community. He's fighting immigrants. He's not fighting crime. And so we can be a state that creates safe communities but lifts up our immigrant community at the same time. You see, when we have those conversations, when we are focused on the issues that impact people's lives, we have the opportunity to win. And here's the good news. When we do this together, the results show us that we can win this in November. What do I mean by that? We've had 2 congressional special elections in Florida this cycle. They've outperformed for Democrats by 15 and 16 points. We've had state legislative races that have outperformed now by 15 and 21 points. I had a very nervous, longtime friend, Republican pollster, call me and say, Republicans are collapsing in the state of Florida right now. He said to me, I don't think we have any more independents left in the state because independents are all now voting for Democrats. The city of Miami just elected a Democratic mayor for the first time in nearly 30 years. And it wasn't even close, it was 19 points. Folks, we're gaining ground in the villages. When we do our part, we're actually winning this thing. And here's the important thing. We're not, as hard as we are trying, we are not closing the gap on voter registration right now. But we don't have to. You don't have to be a registered Democrat to vote for a Democrat. When we win hearts and minds, then we get the voter registrations. I need your help tonight. I need your help tonight. I need your help to leave here believing that this thing is within reach. We know in our hearts that the nation is being torn asunder, that this state has gone too far, and we believe in our hearts that we can do this. But I need you to believe in your head. Don't buy the punditry. Don't listen to those TV people anymore. Don't buy the punditry that there aren't enough registered Democratic voters. Don't buy the punditry that 4 years ago Democrats lost by 16 and 18 points. This isn't 2022, this is 2026. And people are showing up and voting for Democrats right now. And so our job is to show them that we can win. I had a former U.S. Senator, Republican Senator, say to me 2 weeks ago, I'm never gonna leave my party, but this year I'm gonna vote for every Democrat on the ballot. And he said, unless you give me a reason not to, which is why I talk about the values that are bigger than our party, big enough to bring in an independent and a Republican. And here's what's going to happen in November. What's going to happen in November when we win this race, when all of us win this race, the TV networks are not going to tell this story that this guy named David Jolly just won the Florida governorship. Sure, we're going to win, but that's not the story. The story is going to be that Florida's voters for the first time in 30 years have chosen a new direction. In the deep red state of Florida, where the president calls home and Ron DeSantis has had a tighter grip on politics than any governor we've seen, that in that state, the Florida Democratic Party led a new and emerging coalition focused on the 3 values: that the economy should work for everyone, government can improve our lives, and everybody's rights should be protected and their dignity celebrated. And the other 49 states are going to look at Florida and say, what just happened? What just happened? And The answer is going to be that we just built a new political coalition that has not existed in the United States since the emergence of the president. Understand, for people whose greatest commitment is litigating the president, there is no greater coda to a decade of Trumpism than to flip Florida blue this November. That is how we do it. I know I've gone on a little long. I apologize. I'm going to close with this because this is important. This is important. I talk about my family a lot, and I don't want to leave this out. Our two kids, I mention them. I talk about them all the time. I'm still amazed at 53 that two children can come out of the same womb and be so different. Our 6-year-old Cece, Carolina Claire, she's going to be just fine in life, folks. We're going to set up the guardrail. She's going to ping pong off them, and boom, she's gone. She's going to be governor before I am at this rate. Our 4-year-old son, Teddy's told my wife he's never leaving the house. In fact, he said last week he wants to be a stay-at-home dad, but still live with us so his mom and dad can take care of his kids. I mean, I feel sorry for whoever his life partner is going to be because he's got his plans made. But look, it's not easy on a family. It's not easy. We know that. Running for governor. It's not easy on kids. It's part of our decision. We knew as a family we needed to do our part in this moment. We each have to do our part. Whether it's giving $5, registering to vote, going to a rally, standing for office on the ballot. But our daughter one night started crying and she said, "Dad, please don't do this." I said, "Don't run for governor. I don't want you to run for governor." And she meant it, folks. She meant it. She meant it. At 6 years old, she looks at politics and sees it as vile and mean and nasty and divisive. And she said, "Dad, please don't do this." And she meant it. When I was 6, I was looking at the Carter, Reagan, Anderson election. I didn't know what to think about it, but I saw it as this great experiment in the American identity. I saw it as something aspirational. I wanted to know what my parents were going to do, how they were going to vote, my teachers, whatever. But a 6-year-old today, and my daughter's not the only one. I get this all across the state. Our kids look at politics and see it as mean and vile and nasty. The words that came to me in that moment, and I believe in providence that they were just words laid on my heart. I said, "Sweetheart, when you have a chance to change the world, you take it. You take it. You take it." This is that moment, folks. Take me out of this entire conversation as a candidate. Put me back as a dad of a 6-year-old and 4-year-old who's wondering if we should raise our kids in the state of Florida. Think about yourself in the state of Florida. Think about your friends, your family, your kids, your kin, whoever it might be. We know that we are breaking. We are breaking. But we believe in something better. We believe in something better right now. We do. That's why we're here. And if we are going to achieve something better, then we each have to do our part. I need your help. Where I fall short as a candidate, don't criticize, make me stronger. Where I need to be made smarter, do it. Where we need our coalition to grow, help build it. Be a part of change in the state of Florida and in your community that allows us to do something that hasn't been done in politics. Because on election night, the one thing I want to say, in addition to apologizing to the world, is I want to be able to say to my daughter, "Sweetheart, we just changed the world." Be a part of this tonight. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
So we have a couple questions for you.
All right. All right.
Hello? Perfect. All right, so as governor, if the Voting Rights Act came to your desk, would you sign it?
Yeah, thank you. Let's be very careful about how we talk about this because that probably means different things to different people, whether it was the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the SAVE Act, or some of the other legislation moving through. Let's just talk about broad priorities. Voting should be as easy and accessible as it can be secure. And right now, tonight, you could all transfer thousands and hundreds and millions of dollars on your phone in a second. The fact is we continue to reduce people's access to the ballot box because it favors the majority party in Washington and in Tallahassee. But much of the voting rights legislation is actually targeted at also creating equity within all communities, particularly communities of color who have been disparately impacted by voting restrictions of generations in the past century. We need to move towards a place of empowerment of all communities and ensure the greatest level of access to the ballot box that we can, whatever legislation that ultimately takes the form of in Tallahassee.
All right. So if you were elected, are you willing to work with climate scientists to help advocate for new climate policy?
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Yeah, if I haven't made clear, let's bring back science, and that includes climate science. I'll also tell you this, just as a matter of leadership. Look, I have this little quip that makes sense because it's true. I don't think our current governor is the smartest person in the state. But your next governor is not going to be either. I'm not threatened by people who are smarter than I am. I'm empowered by them. One of the things, look, I'm not a climate scientist, but I'm smart enough to know we need to bring climate scientists into policymaking in the state of Florida. We need to defend ratepayers, protect the fragile environment, and advance climate science in the state of Florida. And so, yes, that means building out a team of adults to lead the state of Florida. My leadership style is not to lead out front, but to lead shoulder to shoulder. We are already doing this within our campaign. We're putting together cohorts of advisors. I would invite you to be a part of it with the state university system, with public health, with climate, with the environment, with energy. Contribute, please, your resources and talents. I would love to get to a place by summertime where the state looks at our campaign and doesn't just see David Jolly, but sees a coalition of leaders. Who could the next Surgeon General be? Who could the state university system be run by? What does it look back like to bring in climate science and the expertise around it? This race is about a state ready for change. It's not about a candidate, I promise you. There's a movement going on in the state where people are desperate for subject matter expertise. And yes, it's amazing there's a political issue that's emerged as simple as science in this state, but we're gonna defend science in this state.
All right. Can you speak on women's health rights and what we can do to make it more acceptable for all parties?
Okay. So this is the moment where Vito said, we got one more, we got to run. And we got maybe the most important question of the night. So Vito, I'm sorry, this is going to take a couple minutes. Vito's been at all 170 as well. By the way, I don't often get to do this. I'm going to spotlight Vito for a minute. He's from St. Petersburg, just down the road from me. We've known each other for about 10 or 15 years. The first time we worked together, he was working to beat me. Vito worked with Charlie Crist in the race where Charlie beat me for Congress. And I saw this guy and I said, I don't know how we're going to work together, but one day we are. And today he's a central part of our campaign. So yeah, I apologize in the interest of time. We're gonna wrap up with this question, but it's both policy, but it's also part of my story and introduction. And honestly, part of a family conversation among Democrats should we indeed end up after June in a primary environment. Let me be very clear on the policy of women's health care and reproductive freedom. I supported Amendment 4. I voted for Amendment 4. As governor, I would fight to enact Amendment 4 legislatively, and I will be the first pro-choice governor the state has had in decades. I start with that because I also want to tell my personal story. That's not always where I was. When I talked out at the beginning of the night, mine is a story of change. This is probably one of the most important areas where I have changed. When I got into Congress, it was the first time I'd been elected to anything, I was wrongly applying my faith convictions to a constitutional question. I got some things wrong. I did. And as I was doing that, I didn't like the result. And so I started to move. I ended up being the only, I sponsored a lot of pro-life, anti-choice legislation. A lot of my Democratic critics will say, oh, you can't trust Jolly because of what he did 15 years ago. What I would ask you to do is look what I've done during those 15 years. Because as I started to take votes I didn't like, I started to move. I became the only Republican in Congress to vote against the Planned Parenthood investigation. I tell you, that's a tough vote as a Republican. I went to the House floor, I told Paul Ryan, I'm voting no and I'm leaving and don't come find me. It's not a mistake. And I went and hid for the next 17 minutes so nobody could find me. When Republicans moved to strip, I think it was about $400 million from Planned Parenthood, I offered compromise legislation that said if we're gonna do that this year, let's at least move that money to community health centers so we can ensure continuity of care in underserved communities. I later learned that wasn't perfect, it wasn't apples for apples, but it was part of my move towards fighting for reproductive freedom. I then got to a full embrace of the Roe and Casey framework, and as I studied that as a lawyer, I realized that the court balanced some very difficult issues and they resolved it correctly in leading with bodily autonomy, healthcare freedom, and then recognizing at some point there is an interest of the state in fetal viability. It was not an easy decision in Roe and Casey, but they wrestled with it, and I arrived at the point where I realized Roe and Casey were good enough for the last 50 years, and they should be good enough for the next 50 years. And it also led me to a place where, listen, I was an early proponent of marriage equality, kind of a libertarian Republican long before even Democrats were in favor of marriage equality. And the conversations I would have for a decade were, look, to the faith community, if you're informed by a fundamental faith teaching about this, that should be a blinking red light. Because if it is a faith teaching, it does not belong in a constitutional construct. And I've written a manuscript, one day I'll take to market. It's called Throw Away the Crutch. Throw Away the Crutch. And it's a book for the Christian church. And the premise is very simple. It says to the Christian community and all faith communities, stop rushing to politics and the Republican Party to enact into law your faith teachings that you have been unable to win hearts and minds with through evangelism. Throw away the crutch of government, throw away the crutch of a political party, fight for your faith and fight for your beliefs and evangelize them. And the Constitution will be there to protect that religious liberty for you. But that Constitution has to be there to protect the fundamental liberties and rights of everybody, And so we do have to run, I apologize, but that is maybe part of the most important conversation. One, because it is an issue of such import and impact on women and families across the state, young people who are deciding to leave, but it's also part of the story of my change. As I mentioned at the beginning, I don't run from my change. I don't hide from my change. I get it. A lot of people say, Jolly's a new Democrat. I'm not sure about him. Maybe we need a lifetime Democrat. Maybe so. I'd be happy to support whoever comes out of this primary if we have one. But I would ask you not to be so short-sighted in our own politics, and I mean this about myself, that we forget to see that politics is about bringing new people in and about changing hearts and minds. And so I tell my story of my journey into the Democratic Party because I finally found a home. I wasn't born into the Democratic Party, I chose the Democratic Party. And I chose the Democratic Party because I see a celebration of those three values that I talk about everywhere we go. Thank you for being a part of tonight and being a part of this team. I appreciate it.